The indie game renaissance over the past decade has seen the revitalization of one genre in particular, metroidvanias. Many now iconic metroidvanias have been born from the indie scene. Hollow Knight, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, Axiom Verge, Yoku's Island Express? Okay, look, I'm just reading off the IGN for this part. If anyone knows what the heck Yoku's Island Express is, please let me know in the comments. But one of the most remembered and most iconic Metroidvanias is Ori and the Blind Forest. What made Ori and the Blind Forest so memorable for so many people? Was it the art style, the gameplay, the soundtrack, the story? Whatever it may be, it was certainly worth a sequel in the form of Ori and the Will of the Wisps 5 years later. As someone who is never part of the original hype surrounding this game, or its sequel for that matter, I'm going to be taking an objective look at what made Ori and the Blind Forest actually good, and why people remember it so fondly. Let's begin. In true Metroidvania style, Ori and the Blind Forest is a 2D platformer that sees players explore a world that opens up the more abilities you have unlocked. Due to an involved story, however, the game is much more linear than other Metroidvanias such as Metroid or Hollow Knight. It's not to say that there isn't optional paths and areas to explore, as, especially with the Definitive Edition, many optional side tracks open up as you progress through the main story. But these side tracks usually result in simple upgrades to your health or energy, with one major exception. That exception is Blackroot Burrows and Lost Grove, a 2-in-1 really. These areas are rather sizable and provide a couple of new abilities that are fun and interesting. It's an awesome addition to the Definitive Edition. Regardless of all that, how does the game feel? Honestly, it feels great. Ori's movements are responsive and quick, and the abilities, or skills, that you get add more and more diversity and adaptability to what you can do. I especially like the variety and creativity of these skills. Some are more familiar, double jumping, dashing, and wall jumping. Then there's the creative stuff, such as the bash. With the bash, if activated when Ori is close enough to an enemy, projectile, or specific object, it'll pause time to allow the player to choose where to shoot Ori with the bashed object being flung in the opposite direction. And this isn't the only interesting skill, although it is arguably Ori's most iconic one. There's also the charge jump. Think of this as the jump you can do off of same as a speed booster, but without the long run beforehand. In other words, Ori can jump super high and break through ceilings. It's a rather silly ability that I enjoy using. While most of the game focuses on platforming, there are enemies as well. Most of these enemies have rather simple functions. One just does big jumps, another sticks to walls and shoots spikes in retaliation, another pops out of the ground to launch a projectile onto you. I appreciate the simplicity of the enemies as, since none of them are very complex, you don't have to think too much when you come across them. This allows you to focus on the platforming. That is a weakness of the game that I do want to discuss. Now, I will admit, the way I played the game schedule-wise could be a big contributor to this. I was recording this game and would record around 3 20 to 30 minute videos once a week. But a major problem I came across was trying to remember all the buttons. Every skill has one button, or a button may do two different things depending on the situation or if another button was held. It wasn't super detrimental, but it did cause some confusion and even some deaths throughout the game. Moving back to strong aspects of the game, let's now talk about the level design. This is an easy topic I can wrap up in 4 words. It is very good. But let me elaborate. The level design does a great job of utilizing the various abilities you get throughout the game. Once in a while there may be something required of the player that isn't super obvious, but there's nothing that is needed to progress that's excessively obscure. Some of the areas are actually quite memorable, such as the mind-bending Forlorn Ruins, or portals taking you around the Ginzo tree. There were a couple rough spots, especially with escaping an area after restoring one of the elements, more on the elements later. These high-intensity, skill-based sections were very cool, but got bogged down by a feeling of trial and error. Most things insta-kill you in these sections, and so if you mess up once, you have to start the whole section over again. Speaking of insta-kills, my last gripe with the game is health. Now, it becomes clear in the game that Ori is made to be fragile. that is fine in itself. I can roll with a game where I'm fragile, but what gets a little bit annoying is when everything deals enough damage to kill you in 1 or 2 hits, and the only way around that is to either get good or find the health upgrades, which, by the way, are all in secret side areas. I had to go on an entire side questing episode for this just to make the game feel a little bit more like a normal difficulty. I know that this is a metroidvania and isn't the first game where health upgrades are behind secret areas, but I also feel like there are other ways to make the game more difficult without sidetracking and backtracking being a requirement. Maybe this is just me though. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and please be civil and polite. Overall, I give the gameplay an 8 out of 10. While the gameplay is smooth and generally has a nice difficulty curve, the controls were somewhat overwhelming, and there were some spots in the level design that were a little too unclear or lacked that excellence. There were also occasional bugs, but none of them were severe enough to be worth considering. I think the first thing that people learn about Ori and the Blind Forest is its presentation. The art is beautiful. It's so good. World design is fantastical, colorful, and so beautiful to look at. I've never seen a world map that I wanted to just sit and look how pretty it is. This hand-painted world is matched by beautiful characters and creatures. I even like the annoying slimes everywhere, their prickers and glows, emphasizing the danger they bring. The size of Ori itself shows how, despite all the abilities and upgrades you get throughout the game, the world of Nibel is still dangerous and scary. I want to now quickly mention the animations. Since the game is a platformer, it's obvious that you're going to be jumping a lot. What I especially like with this game is just how many different animations they have for jumping in different directions. It shows how spry and limber Ori is, and adds to the sense of magic the game exudes. Another outstanding part of the game is its music. Even if you have no interest in playing this game, I would highly recommend checking out the soundtrack. It's magical, emotional, and elegant. The perfect example is the main theme. Some tracks emphasize danger and stir anxiety, such as the track Escape the Ruins. It's also good to bring up the difference between the original and definitive editions of the game because, aside from a new area with new story and new abilities, there's tons of new music. As an additional note, there's no need to play the original version of Ori and the Blind Forest if you have access to the definitive edition, and the definitive edition is more accessible anyways. The presentation of Ori and the Blind Forest gets the easiest 10 out of 10 I'll probably ever give. If I had to complain about anything with the presentation, it's that it can be kind of hard to look at with all the enemies out and about. But the environment and characters are gorgeous and the soundtrack is beautiful, making this complaint more of a joke than anything. Unlike other games I've reviewed on the channel so far, Ori and the Blind Forest has a relevant, impactful story! The game begins with a cutscene showing Ori in the form of a leaf falling away from the spirit tree during an ominous storm. Ori is found and raised by a creature named Naru, and we see how much they bond so that Naru can die. Wait, what? Yeah, the beginning 30 minutes of this game aren't very happy. A shockwave from the spirit tree causes widespread decay and death across Nibel with the game's setting. Even Ori dies! No, not my boy! But don't worry, the spirit tree revives Ori and sends him on a quest to restore the 3 elements of Nibel with the help of Sein. Sein plays 2 important roles in Ori and the Blind Forest. For one, Sein is your gun. It shoots for you, explodes for you, and is very important to surviving the dangerous creatures of Nibel. But what makes Sein important for the story is that Sein is also your guide. It explains where you should go and what you should do in order to restore the forest. This falls back to the linearity I mentioned in the gameplay segment of this video. The story of Ori and the Blind Forest is very linear. There's no secret story options or side paths that impact the game, and it has only one ending. And Sein demonstrates that linearity by holding her hand the whole way through. I didn't mind this. Sein never dipped to Navi tiers of hand-holding or nuisance, but the story is very much one and done, unlike what I've come to know from the metroidvanias that I've played. Again, this doesn't take points away from the quality of Ori and the Blind Forest. If anything, it gives the player purpose wherever they go, but it is something worth discussing. That being said, the story is nothing groundbreaking. This is another one of those games that focuses more so on the gameplay rather than the story, like the other games that I've reviewed on this channel so far. But it's still a rather good story. A lot of the story is told through either Sen or narration from the Spirit Tree and weaves a tale of bringing light to the world. As you journey across Nibel to restore the world, you also meet the game's main antagonist, Kuro. Kuro is a great villain for many reasons. For one, she's huge! Look at her, it's scary and intimidating! Oh wait, that's like kind of the point or something. The game is about overcoming fear to bring hope and light to the world. Anyways, Kuro is also human. Of course that's in quotes because obviously Kuro is a giant bird, but Kuro has cares and feelings and isn't just evil for the sake of being evil. We learned that after Ori was separated from the Spirit Tree, the tree sent a powerful wave across Nibel in search of Ori. While that wave somehow didn't find Ori, it does kill Kuro's children. That's why Kuro ripped the heart of the Spirit Tree out, causing the Spirit Tree to decay and the entirety of the game to happen. It's also why Kuro hunts Ori with a vengeance. Again, while nothing groundbreaking particularly, Kuro's story and involvement with the main plot is great. With all that being said, I give Ori and the Blind Forest's story a 7 out of 10. Said it before, we'll say it again, the story is solid but just not groundbreaking. Also, while I'm fine with Ori being a silent protagonist, I would have liked to have seen a little bit of something to display a personality beyond just being a child and just being brave. For the sake of argument, the ending will cover everything after you enter Mount Horu. Speaking of Mount Horu, the game's final area, it's probably the best area in the entire game. It has a structure that is far more unique than any other area of the game. How, you may ask? Upon entering Mount Horu, it's very clear that there is lava everywhere. Climbing to the top of the inside of the mountain gives you 2 paths. While both must be completed, the player is allowed to choose which one to tackle first. Then, once the player successfully blocked off the lava in that area, a new path opens up. Basically, it's a hub world with many small challenges that you must overcome, each one testing your mastery with different skills. One is all about your mastery over the bash ability, another tests your wall jumping, and there's even a lava chase sequence. It's a great way to test the player in a climactic way. The final chase sequence, however, is where it gets very crazy. After journeying deep down into the volcano, Ori and Sen find the element of warmth. But just before they can restore it, Kuro shows up. How? I don't know. This initiates a chase sequence where Ori has to run through a fast-paced obstacle course requiring skill in just about every ability. This is an awesome final sequence, save for one thing that twists it into something that, if you lack patience, becomes very annoying. Most of the dangerous parts of this chase can one-shot you, and you have to restart the entire chase sequence over if you die. While personally I'm fine with this aspect of the final sequence, I tend to prefer some old-school difficulty, it can definitely be infuriating for many players. At the same time, it does add to the dramatic climax of the game and emphasizes the tension. Last is the final cutscene. Kuro catches up to Ori and Sen. Sen is knocked out, and Kuro is looming and about to kill Ori. Then, suddenly, we start playing as Naru again. It's a nice touch of having Naru be the first thing you play as and the last thing you play as, both times heading towards Ori. Naru rescues Ori from Kuro and then embraces Ori. Kuro sees the parent-child relationship that Naru and Ori have and remembers her own children. This is the biggest story development in the entire game, and not just because it's the climax. Kuro grows as a character, seeing that there are others like her and that what she was trying to do to Ori, that is, kill him, is the same as what the Spirit Tree did to her children. So, as her heart changes, Kuro saves her last unborn child by restoring the Spirit Tree's life so the rain can come and stop the fire. Unfortunately, this kills Kuro, but saves her child and everyone else. Afterward, the other Oris, or whatever they are, return. Our Ori, Naru, and Gumo all live happily together and take care of Kuro's remaining egg. The game closes with the egg cracking, a new life being born. Overall, the ending is a purely awesome experience. Well, there is a roller coaster of emotions throughout, and the ending is very satisfying. While the final chase sequence can be frustrating on a first playthrough, the difficulty increase is not that jarring nor that bad. I give the ending a 9 out of 10. Ori and the Blind Forest is a magical metroidvania, full of wonder but also danger. The gameplay is smooth and responsive, the world is beautifully crafted in art and structure, and the story is a great basis for the game. The childlike magic exuding from the environment and soundtrack, in combination with the hostile creatures and challenging platforming, is what has created such a memorable experience that has stuck with so many people. Unfortunately, there are some shortcomings in difficulty and story, but even then, it doesn't hold Ori and the Blind Forest back from being great and memorable. With all that being said, my final score for Ori and the Blind Forest is a 34 out of 40, which is a B in school terms. Thank you guys so much for watching and sticking around to the end. This took a lot of work, so I'd really appreciate it if you liked the video, comment your thoughts down below, share it with your friends, and hey, if you enjoyed it, maybe consider subscribing, or you can check out more of what I do over on Twitch or my socials, Facebook and Twitter. And if you wanted to see my full playthrough of this game, which all the footage was taken from that playthrough, then you can find it in the iCards up here somewhere. And I will be returning to making regular content again soon, and so thank you guys so much for watching again, and I will see you all in the next episode.